Snow fell like powdered glass across the city, delicate and deceptive. Streets sparkled under the illusion of warmth, but the air was frigid, biting. Inside my apartment, the heater hummed softly while I packed the last of the holiday gifts into the trunk of my car. My name is Jace, I'm 32, and for most of my adult life, I've been a one-man bank vault for people who only knock when they want something. I work 2 jobs, logistics coordinator by day, and bartender by night at a luxury rooftop bar downtown. I didn't work this hard because I loved it, I worked this hard because I learned early that survival meant independence. And independence cost money. My family never learned that lesson. To them, I wasn't Jace the son. I was Jace the solution. The fixer. The guy they could depend on when things broke down, be it their car, their mortgage, or their excuses. For years, I tolerated it. I was the responsible one, the dependable one. My younger brother, Levi, was the golden child. He went to art school on my dime, lived off my support, and never missed an opportunity to remind me how boring my life was. "Why do you even work so much?" he asked once, half drunk at a family dinner. "You don't even enjoy life." I smiled through gritted teeth. Because someone had to keep the lights on. That Christmas, I did what I always did. I showed up with bags full of gifts, electronics for Levi, skincare sets for Mom, a new heated blanket for Dad, even a custom chew toy for their precious golden retriever. Dinner was loud, overcooked, and laced with passive aggression. The kind of gathering where everyone smiles too wide and says Merry Christmas like it's a threat. I kept my head down, ate my meal, and waited to leave. But fate had one last gift to give me. As the roast cooled and the wine ran out, my father put down his fork, cleared his throat, and looked me dead in the eye. "Jace," he said, voice flat, "we wanted to let you know. We're removing you from the will." I blinked. "What?" "You're no longer part of the estate," my mother said quietly, her eyes darting away from mine. "Levi will inherit everything. It's been decided." I looked at Levi, who was already leaning back with a smug little smirk. He raised his glass like he'd won a game no one else knew they were playing. "I was wondering when they'd finally say it," he muttered. The silence that followed was thick, sticky. Like cold syrup. Then I smiled. Not a broken smile. Not a sad one. A clean, final one. "All right," I said, placing my napkin gently on the table. "If that's how you feel, let's make it fair." No one understood what I meant. Not yet. 2 days later, while a storm rolled in over the rooftops, I opened my laptop, logged into my utility account, and shut everything off. Electricity. Water. Gas. Internet. All of it. Because every single account was in my name. Has been for years. I was the one who paid the bills. Quietly. Reliably. While they enjoyed their hot showers and fast Wi-Fi, I worked back-to-back shifts to make sure their lives never missed a beat. But if I wasn't part of the family, then I wasn't their lifeline either. And as the snow fell, I sat back with a hot drink in my warm, well-lit apartment and watched the panic unfold in real time. The texts came in like an avalanche. "Mom, Jace, something's wrong with the power. The whole house is dark. Call me. Dad, the water's off. What happened? Fix it now. Levi, you think this is funny? I was in the middle of a tournament. Wi-Fi's dead. You're such a jerk." I tossed my phone on the couch and turned up the heater. Let them sit in the cold. Let them realize how much of their comfort had been built on my sacrifice. For a moment, I thought back to all the years of "you're lucky to have us" lectures, of being guilted into paying for things I couldn't afford, of being told I was selfish if I ever hesitated. They always made it sound like I was part of something sacred. Family. But the second I stopped being useful, they discarded me like expired milk. And now? They remembered me again. Funny how that worked. By the next morning, the messages changed tone. "Mom, Jace. We're sorry about Christmas. Please, can we talk? Dad, your mother isn't feeling well. The cold is too much for her. Be reasonable. Levi, okay, fine. This is serious. Just turn the heat back on, man." I sipped my coffee. No. They had made their choice. They thought I'd never walk away because I never had before. But they were wrong. This time, the chain snapped. And the silence in my apartment wasn't just quiet. It was peace. The knocking started 3 days after I shut everything off. It was loud, impatient, urgent, not the kind of knock you give when you come bearing gifts. I stood, mug of coffee in hand, and stared at the door like it was some ancient spirit trying to get back into my life. I knew who it was. Of course I did. I opened the door slowly. There they were, my parents and Levi. Bundled in mismatched layers, pale from the cold, and noticeably humbled by the situation. Mom's lips were tinged blue. Dad's hands shook slightly. And Levi, normally cocky and composed, looked like a raccoon dragged out of a trash can at midnight. I leaned against the doorframe, letting the warmth from my apartment spill out behind me. "Well," I said with a casual smile. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Mom stepped forward first, voice brittle. "Jace, this has gone on long enough. We're freezing. Your father hasn't slept in days." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that right?" Dad cleared his throat, attempting authority. "You made your point. Turn the utilities back on." Levi was less diplomatic. "This isn't funny anymore. Grow up and stop being a lunatic." I exhaled slowly, fighting the urge to laugh in his face. Funny. I was going to say the same thing. They looked at me like I had gone mad. But this wasn't madness. This was a reckoning 10 years in the making. "Do you remember," I said calmly, "what you told me on Christmas night? When you looked me in the eye and said I wasn't part of the family anymore?" Mom blinked. "That was emotional. We didn't mean." "No," I cut in. "You did. And that's the thing about words, you don't get to pick which ones stick." They shuffled uncomfortably in the doorway. None of them moved. I waited for the apology. For even a glimmer of self-awareness. It didn't come. Instead, Levi crossed his arms. "So what, this is payback? You're going to let us freeze just because we made a mistake?" "No," I said. "I'm letting you freeze because I'm finally done letting you burn me." Silence. Mom rubbed her arms. "Can we at least come in for a few minutes? Just to warm up?" I held the door open wide. "Be my guest." They didn't need much convincing. Once inside, they scrambled to the heat vents like moths to flame. Levi didn't even take his shoes off. He grabbed the nearest mug, poured himself coffee, and acted like he belonged. Dad stood near the window, still trying to look dignified while visibly trembling. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mom spoke. "This isn't how families treat each other," she said gently, with that old familiar manipulation in her voice. I sat on the edge of the couch. "Exactly. That's what I've been trying to tell you, for years." Dad looked annoyed. "So this is some kind of lesson? You're punishing us?" "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." Levi slammed his mug down. "Oh my God, you're being such a diva about this. It was a will, Jace. You're not dying tomorrow. Who even cares?" I stared at him for a long, hard second. "I don't care about the will. I care that none of you ever saw me as a person. You saw me as a paycheck. And the second I stopped being useful, you cut me out. Like garbage." His mouth opened, then shut. Mom tried to salvage it. "Let's make a deal." I snorted. "A deal?" She nodded. "You turn the power back on, and we forget this happened. Clean slate." I let out a laugh, sharp and joyless. "You really think I'm the one having a tantrum?" Dad stepped forward, clearly losing patience. "This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now do the right thing." I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it again. "For $10,000. They blinked. "What?" Mom gasped. "That's what it'll cost. Do you want the power back on? Pay me 10 grand. Call it retroactive rent for the 10 years I spent propping this family up while you looked down on me. That's insane." Dad barked. "You're out of your mind." "No," I said coolly. "I'm just finally charging interest." Levi stood up, face red. "You're seriously kicking us out into the cold?" "No," I replied. "I'm letting you leave. There's a difference." They hesitated, waiting for me to crack. Hoping the old Jace, the obedient son, the free financial fountain, would crawl out of my chest and say, "Fine. I'll help you." But that version of me had died somewhere between the ignored thank yous and the Christmas disownment. Dad left first, not looking back. Just muttered, "Let's go." Mom lingered. Looked at me like she wanted to say something. But when she opened her mouth, she found no words. So she followed him. Levi was last. He stood in the doorway, jaw clenched. "You're going to regret this," he said. I met his eyes with a smile. "I doubt it." Then I closed the door. And locked it. I didn't watch them walk down the street. I didn't peer out the window. I just stood there, in the silence. And it wasn't cold. It was warm, powerful, and mine. For the first time in my life, I was not their son, their fixer, their financial plan. I was Jace. And I was free. The first week after cutting them off felt like walking through a dream, a strange, heavy-limbed sort of peace. My phone no longer lit up with late-night requests, last-minute emergencies, or passive-aggressive guilt bombs disguised as check-ins. For once, my life was quiet. And that silence? It didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I woke up each day without dread. I didn't rush to check bank balances, didn't start my morning by scrolling through electric company apps to make sure everything was paid on time for their home. Because it wasn't my home. Not anymore. But of course, peace doesn't last forever. On day 5, the manipulation campaign began anew. It started with my Aunt Clara, the self-proclaimed family peacemaker who'd never lifted a finger when I was drowning under the weight of everyone's expectations. She called me midday, the kind of call where you already know the voice on the other end is going to say something wildly out of line. "Jace, honey," she began, her tone drenched in syrupy concern. "I heard about what happened. Your poor mother is beside herself." "Then maybe she should have thought about that before cutting me out of her will," I replied, sipping my tea. A gasp, theatrical. "You don't mean that. Family's all we have." I tilted my head. "That's funny. When I was the one keeping the lights on, nobody said anything about family. They just handed me another bill. They're struggling, Jace. They can't fix everything overnight." I smiled politely, the way people smile right before they shut a door. "That's not my problem anymore." And I hung up. The next few days were quiet again, until Levi called. I almost didn't answer, but a part of me was curious. Maybe, just maybe, he'd grown up a little. Realized something. Apologized. "Jace," he snapped the second I picked up. "You win. Okay? You win. The house is falling apart, Dad's losing it, and Mom hasn't stopped crying in a week." I leaned back in my chair, watching sunlight filter through the curtains. "And what do you want me to do about that?" "Fix it," he said, like it was the most obvious answer in the world. "You're the only one who can." I paused. "Let me ask you something," I said calmly. "When you all sat me down at Christmas, when you decided I wasn't family anymore, were you expecting me to still foot the bills after that?" He hesitated. "It's not like that." "Really? Then what was it like?" He sighed, and when he spoke again, his voice dropped to a lower, more uncertain tone. "You're really doing this? Just cutting us off?" I already did. Click. I blocked his number before I could second guess it. The next message came from my mother. Text only. "Mom, we never thought you'd do something like this. I hope you can live with yourself, knowing you abandoned your family in their time of need." I stared at the message for a long time. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. Once, that sentence would have gutted me. But now? Now it just made me sad, for her. Me, I didn't abandon you. You abandoned me the moment I was only worth keeping around if I paid for everything. Now you get to live with that choice. Take care. I hit send. Then I smiled. Not because it felt good to hurt them, no. But because I had finally chosen me. The fallout rippled through our extended family. I heard from a mutual friend that Levi had finally started job hunting. Apparently working retail part-time at some electronics store across town. Funny how quickly people figure things out when the safety net's gone. As for my parents, they lost the house. Turns out when you ignore bills for months, when you live beyond your means and rely on the son you disown to keep the lights on, things fall apart. They were forced to downsize to a tiny 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Levi moved back in with them. The golden boy with his gaming setup and designer sneakers now sleeping on a futon next to a space heater. I should have felt vindicated. I didn't. I felt free. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity. My own life took a different turn. I got a better apartment, one with real sunlight, hardwood floors, and a balcony big enough to grow herbs. I started cooking more, actually tasting the food instead of rushing through takeout between shifts. I took a weekend trip to the coast. Just me, a good book, and the ocean. It was the first vacation I'd taken in over a decade. And for once, my money was mine. My time was mine. There was no one waiting with a new emergency. No phone calls demanding rent, or guilt trips about love measured in dollars. There was just me. And it was enough. The final test came weeks later. An email. Subject line, from Dad. My gut tightened, but I opened it anyway. Jace. Your mother's birthday is next week. She'd love to see you. Maybe we can put all of this behind us. I chuckled. Put it behind us? Like they hadn't tossed me out of their lives like a broken ATM? I typed a reply. Dad. I appreciate the invite. But the last time I saw you, you made it very clear I wasn't family anymore. Honestly? I like it that way. Tell Mom I said happy birthday. Send. Then I closed the email, and that chapter of my life, for good. It was a quiet Thursday night when he showed up. I had just finished dinner, roast chicken and garlic potatoes, the kind of meal I used to dream about when all my time and money went toward someone else's groceries. The kitchen smelled warm, like comfort. My apartment glowed with soft yellow light and calm music played in the background. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Not desperate, not urgent, controlled, but heavy. I didn't even need to check the peephole. I knew. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. My father. He looked smaller. Not physically, not really, but the weight of life had taken a toll. His shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. The pride that used to lace every sentence was nowhere in sight. His coat was worn, his shoes dusted in salt from the winter streets. For the first time in my life, he didn't look like the man who raised me. He looked like someone who'd lost control, and finally knew it. I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. What do you want? He exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his forehead. Just hear me out, Jace. I tilted my head, unmoved. Funny. That's what I said for years. None of you listened. He swallowed hard. Your mother wants to see you. I laughed, bitterly. Now she does? She's not doing well, he said, eyes starting to the floor. I narrowed mine. Sick? Or just said she lost her power supply? Jace. His tone hardened for just a moment, like the old version of him was trying to claw back to the surface. She misses you. We all do. I crossed my arms. Where was that family spirit when you cut me out of the will and told me I wasn't part of the family anymore? He had no answer. Just a sigh, eyes cast to the ground like maybe he'd find an explanation there. I stared at him, my heart calm. No anger, no fire. Just exhaustion. Why are you really here? I asked. He hesitated. Then it came. We lost the house. I blinked. Excuse me? He glanced up, ashamed. The bills. Everything piled up. After you stopped helping, we tried to manage, but we couldn't. We thought Levi would get a job, but he didn't. I finished for him. He nodded. We've moved into a small apartment. It's not what we're used to. I bit the inside of my cheek, feeling the irony curl in my stomach. The very house they had tried to guilt me into paying for, the one they used as leverage to remove me from their lives, was gone. Poetic justice didn't even begin to describe it. So what? I said, eyes cold. You want me to feel sorry for you? You want me to help? He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't say it. Don't insult us both. His nostrils flared. Jesus, Jace. You're really going to hold a grudge forever? I smiled thinly. It's not a grudge. It's a lesson. You're being cruel, he snapped. Heartless. That made me laugh. Hard. Cruel? I repeated. You told me I wasn't your son. You erased me from your will in front of the whole family. And now I'm cruel because I finally believe you? He looked like he wanted to yell. To rage. But he couldn't. Because I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry. I had nothing left to give, especially not the satisfaction of my pain. Go home, I said simply. Wherever that is now. He lingered, searching my face for a crack. Something soft. Something he could grab onto. There was nothing left. Finally, he turned and walked away. I didn't watch. I didn't call after him. I closed the door and locked it. The next few months were blissfully uneventful. No more guilt-laced emails. No more veiled threats disguised as family dinners. I moved on. I started taking weekends off, real weekends. I joined a boxing class, reconnected with an old friend I hadn't seen in years, and started volunteering at a local shelter. I poured into people who gave something back, warmth, kindness, respect. I built a life. And not one brick of it had my family's name on it. Then, one last message. From Levi. Hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. I stared at it for a second, then tossed my phone aside. I didn't need to reply. Because he was right. I did get what I wanted. peace, autonomy, a future that belonged to me. The final truth hit like sunrise after a long, stormy night. If someone only loves you when you're useful to them, it's not love. It's convenience. And when people show you who they really are, you don't beg them to change. You shut the door. You lock it. And you never open it again. It's strange how quiet freedom can be. Not the kind of freedom people parade around with banners and fireworks. Not the freedom that comes from quitting a job or moving to a new city. I mean the kind that creeps in silently, like sunlight filtering through a crack in a wall you didn't know was there. That's what my life felt like after I shut the final door on my family. Not dramatic. Not triumphant. Just still and peaceful. A full year passed since I cut them off. No texts, no emails, no surprise visits. They had finally accepted what I knew the moment they turned their backs on me on Christmas. We were done. Not because I stopped loving them, but because they never really loved me, not unconditionally. They loved what I could give them. And when that dried up, so did their affection. In the early months, I kept expecting guilt to show up like it always had. A text from mom with a tear emoji. A voicemail from dad pretending to check on me. A message from Levi pretending he didn't resent me for not bailing him out. But it didn't come. At least not in the way I was used to. Instead, I heard things secondhand. Snippets passed through mutual acquaintances. Whispers over drinks with old friends who still had ties to the family. They moved again. Smaller place. Levi finally got a part-time job, but he complains constantly. Your mom's been quiet lately. Not like before. They weren't updates, they were confirmations. The consequences I had predicted had come to pass. But they weren't mine to worry about anymore. I had handed back the weight they'd placed on my shoulders, and I didn't miss the burden one bit. What I had missed, what I had forgotten, was how it felt to live for myself. In the past, I didn't even realize how much of my life was spent waiting for the next crisis. I didn't book trips because something might come up. I didn't go out for dinner unless I was sure I wouldn't be asked for a little help the next day. Even simple purchases, new shoes, better groceries, were calculated against the possibility of having to pay someone else's bills. Now? I slept better. I smiled more. I took real vacations. I started learning the guitar, something I'd wanted to do since I was 19 but never felt secure enough to commit to. I went to the coast for a weekend and watched the sun sink behind the ocean with no one to answer to. No one texting me with fake emergencies. No, can you just send $200 to cover a surprise expense? Just me. My money. My time. My life. And for the first time ever, I stopped apologizing for choosing myself. I used to think love meant sacrifice. That if you really cared about someone, you gave everything, your time, your money, your peace, until there was nothing left. But that's not love. That's servitude. And the people who truly love you would never want you empty. They would never sit back and let you drown so they could stay dry. I wrote a list one day. Just for myself. A quiet ritual. On one side, I wrote everything I had paid for over the years. Levi's college tuition. Mom's new car. Dad's kitchen renovation. Their utilities for almost a decade. Plane tickets for Levi and his girlfriend. Birthday gifts, groceries, emergency loans that never got repaid. It filled the page. On the other side, I wrote everything I had received from them that wasn't financial. The page stayed blank. That's when I stopped calling it family. That's when I finally named it for what it was, a contract. One I had never agreed to. A few months ago, I received an email from Levi. No subject line. Just a one-sentence message. Guess you got what you wanted. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I was happy. He was right. I had gotten what I wanted, my life back. It didn't come with balloons or applause. It came quietly, through boundaries, through reflection, through one difficult no at a time. And it was worth every second. I think people believe walking away from toxic family is some grand explosion, a dramatic showdown where you scream all your pain and storm out with a suitcase. But for me, it wasn't like that. It was small choices. Saying no. Letting the phone ring. Ignoring that guilt-laced text. And slowly, each boundary I put up became a brick. And over time, those bricks became a wall. Not to trap myself in, but to keep the poison out. You know what's funny? I used to be terrified of being alone. That was the fear they used to keep me close. We're the only family you have. Who else will be there for you when you're older? Turns out, I am. I'm here for me. I show up for myself every day, in ways they never did. And my life is quieter. Simpler. But stronger. I know now that family isn't about blood. It's about respect. About balance. About love that flows both ways, not just up the ladder toward the people who demand it. So if you're in the position I was, overworked, undervalued, and emotionally drained by people who call themselves family, know this. You are allowed to choose peace over obligation. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect your time, your money, your energy, your joy. And you don't owe anyone an apology for that. Not even the people who raised you. If they only love you when you're useful, it was never love. It was convenience. And the second you stop being convenient, they'll show you who they really are. Let them. Then walk away. And never look back.